taking a look at our XRAD radar system, and I can tell you as the day progresses, this is going to look a lot different. We know this huge winter system is going to bring impacts to dozens of states here in America. So we wanted to bring in the expert to help talk a little bit more about what to expect. We do have Bob Oravec, the lead forecaster at the Weather Prediction Center, of course, part of the National Weather Service. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
All right, welcome, Josh.
All right, so first off, as I mentioned, things are going to get more active later on today. But can you kind of break down broadly here what folks across the country can expect? Because it sounds like it's going to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, we have a really very impactful weather system that's going to be affecting large areas of the country. Now, currently, we have winter storm watches and warnings stretching already from Kansas eastward through the Ohio Valley all the way to the mid-Atlantic. So we have watches and warnings about across 1,500 miles of the country. It's affecting a huge amount of people. I think upwards to 50 million people are currently under some type of winter weather advisory. And the snow is definitely going to be picking up later on today, especially across the plains. And then during the day on Sunday, pushing eastward towards the Ohio Valley. And then on Monday into the eastern U.S. So it's going to be a really widespread access to some very heavy snowfall amounts. But also, in addition to the heavy snow, just south of the heavy snow axis, we're going to have some significant icing. So it's going to be a pretty impactful weather event and really impact travel over the next few days.
And I did want to ask here, as we take a closer look at all of this, is this something that we normally see, this type of a system that is so large and is going to impact so many people? Is that fairly standard as we are in winter?
Yeah, well, yeah, we are in winter, and the setup is such that the storm is moving generally from a west to east direction. So we have the potential for it going across a good part of the country. In past major winter storms that have affected the U.S., you often see a pretty long path. So it's not unheard of to have such a long path, especially with a major storm. Any individual storm can have a smaller footprint, to say. But yeah, this one stretching from a good part of across the country, central to east United States, is not unheard of.
And I do want to talk about ice, because that is something that a lot of people don't realize just kind of how impactful that can be. You're talking about a little bit of ice and it can have a huge impact, right?
Yeah, well, ice is not as visual as snow is. So a lot of times if you have heavy snowfall on the ground, people may drive slower or they may not. But with ice, you don't necessarily see it right away. And then you can, all of a sudden, it doesn't take a lot of ice to start to skid. You can get a hundredth of an inch, 200th of an inch of ice, and it might be as damaging with respect to driving as a heavier accumulation. So yeah, ice is not as well seen visually, but it can still have huge impacts.
Yeah, and it's important to note that that black ice, many of us who have driven over it know the impacts that you can have if you are driving over that. So where does this storm head next? After it does impact these millions of people, does it just kind of move out? How does this all work?
Yeah, it will be moving from west to east. So the impacts will be developing today across the plains and then pressing eastward towards the Ohio Valley and then into the eastern United States, specifically the mid-Atlantic region by Monday. And then it moves offshore. And then in the wake of it, it's pretty cold across the country. We're in a very cold weather pattern, so it's not going to be much melting. So the impacts, they're going to be pretty impactful over the next few days, but the impacts will continue after the event is over, and especially as we go into the beginning of the next work week. So a lot of cleanup to be done, or there will be a lot of cleanup that has to be done from this storm as we get over the next several days.
One thing that's interesting is, I mean, I live in Florida now, so I can't really talk about winter weather overall. It dips down to 60 degrees and everyone's wearing these heavy coats. But as far as what we've seen over the past several winter seasons, has it been more mild than we're used to seeing, or has it been kind of on par for what you'd expect?
Yeah, I think it has been milder. And then you could get lulled into a false sense of complacency because, winter weather can come back. It doesn't take much for the atmosphere to produce really cold temperatures. I mean, we've had a lot of cold temperatures, cold air in place, which is the first ingredient we need for a winter storm, it's hitting back at us. Winter weather will always be there in the winter. Sometimes we're lucky and we have a milder pattern across the country. But right now, the pattern is very favorable for cold air, and we mix the cold air with a storm system coming off the Pacific and moving across the central to east United States, and we are going to have a pretty highly impactful weather event.
My last question here, what advice do you have for folks who maybe say, we're used to winter weather, it's some snow, it's some ice, no big deal. Folks who are in the path of this system, what advice do you have for them?
It's going to be a lot of travel headaches. So, it's better not to travel if you can. I know some people, they have to get out and do whatever they have to do, but the less people that go out, the lesser the impact. When the final story is told about the storm, how many people actually heed the warnings and watches and advisories will tell how impactful the event was. If you have less people out on the roads, less accidents, the impacts will be at least somewhat constrained. There's going to be impacts no matter what. You can't do much about the heavy snowfall amounts and the icing that's going to occur. But, if you can keep the impacts from people going out traveling down to a minimum, we'll have probably less impacts from the storm.
All right, Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else you want to add about this before I let you go?
No, it's going to be a pretty broad area of the country that is affected. So it's unfortunately for people that don't like winter weather, it's going to be pretty impactful. But a lot of people do like it. So, there's always a mix of people.
It's always 50-50. Some people love the snow and other people, don't like it very much. Thank you again, Bob, for taking the time to be here with us.
You're welcome, Josh. Anytime.